Good morning.
Good morning, Catherine.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Happy Valentine's to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me see if I can get Ani on the phone. We are limited to this. She she can't get into her emails, so we can't send her a link.
Wow.
And she
This is a
can't,
temporary thing?
I don't think so. Yeah, she changed drastically at one point late last year, and she is not really quite recovered from that. She just suddenly couldn't do anything, and she's still there. She's happy, she's cheerful, but she just doesn't seem to be able to make the connection she needs to make in order to function well online. So, so we will try this and see how it works. Um,
Good to see you, Carl.
Nice to see you, Robert. We were talking about you yesterday.
Oh, sorry.
Catherine and I.
we were, yes.
I tried to defend you, but Catherine was just vicious in gossiping.
So here we are.
Here we are.
Oh, good.
Good. Oh, so where we are, what are we up to? What are we doing?
Finishing
Finishing what?
lunch.
Finish lunch.
What?
Robert is finishing lunch.
Oh, okay. I'm going to put my earbud in. So 1 second. Okay, plugged in.
Very good. So happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you very much. Happy Valentine's Day to you too.
Okay, so what are we going to talk about today?
Oh, well, I'm focusing in on, I'm just beginning to focus in on kind of a venture here at Friendship Matter that I'm wanting to instigate. Just getting organized in my little apartment room. Well, it's not an apartment, it's just a room.
The studio.
Studio, in my studio. That's right. Yeah, but I'm not organized yet to really share it. But I've got some notes here that I could share, and maybe it'll flow together in making some kind of sense. If I may, can I just read a little bit of what I've written? My motive and desire for coming to Friendship Manor, which is where I am now, is to be of service to others in a way that helps put them in touch with their own gifts and talents.
Nice.
To help others get in touch with their own gifts and talents. And it's all about finding purposeful service that animates your soul, animates our soul, because that seems to be what's missing to me, or what wants to be energized is our soul, being of soul service, which involves giving of our time and talents. improves our sense of purpose and well-being. And I volunteered a couple years at a Red Cross in Santa Barbara. And so I became familiar with the humanitarian principles. And I've always had a desire to focus on them and to bring them forth. And the humanitarian principles are, the Red Cross humanitarian principles are, well, first of all, humanity and neutrality, universality, unity, voluntary service, impartiality, and interdependence. And wouldn't it be wonderful if those were on our hearts and minds?
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to bring that forth some kind of way. And it's kind of what my motive and intention is in coming to live at Friendship Manor, which seems to be a very good environment for bringing something like this forth. And I'm having a meeting next Monday after breakfast with the two head honchos here at Friendship Manor, who are just delightful souls. Because I just want that deeper connection in our solar plexus with each other.
That's a wonderful check-in, Ani. Very, very nice. Very nice.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, Robert,
Yes.
how about you checking in?
All right. Well, I'm in the midst of wondering about time. It seems to me tricking me, going faster some days. I mean, really fast, like today, and other days it goes so slowly. No, I'm finishing my last project right now, and so it's in the midst of fixing water lines out front and watching over some tradesmen who are putting in the tile in my shower. So it's kind of a crunch, has been today. And in a way it's welcome, but in another way, I was really getting used to not having to rush.
Mm.
Particularly when I'm dealing with contractors who are like they're caffeine stoked on a good day. So you know, it's interesting. I haven't been in this space for over a year because, you know, dealing with illness. So I was really protecting my spare time, or, you know, my time. And it, you know, it's not terrible. I'm just sort of recollecting myself after pushing through lunch to get some things done.
Well, you said your last project. What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm definitely not taking on any more work. You know, architectural work. I'm going to stop it. Just because it's very difficult, getting to be very difficult for me to do that. Plus, basically, I'm doing a lot of what Ani was just describing in terms of the little neighborhood here, as well as other neighborhoods, virtual or real, reality. Well, I guess they were reality based, but physically reality based. So
Well, I'm hoping you can come to the webinars that we're doing on community, because I think you would have a lot to contribute.
I've experienced a lot in that regard. Yes.
It would be really fun to have your participation.
What time do these meet?
They're all at 5:30, which would be 8:30 your time. I don't know if that's too late.
No, I'm healing to the point where five, I can,
Well, it would be 8:30 your time.
yeah, that I can stay out for a while. No, where that really became an issue was a year ago. I was taking classes to a course to be a presenter, a moderator for crossing party lines. In which case, 8:30 to 10, it was 8 to 10 my time, was just I couldn't handle it
Yeah.
because I was in, you know,
A different mode. Yeah.
all of it, I mean, I had to be on top of it. I could mostly listen at that hour.
Well, and I'll bet you can participate a little bit. I think you'll have
Of
things to
course,
say.
of course.
I
But
think
all I'm getting at is that I'm beginning to adjust to being pretty much physically, cured, but, adjusting to a new life at 78 years old.
I know.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm resisting that. That's all I can say. Although I will tell you, I took on this company with a great deal of caution, I guess I want to say, just for those reasons, because I can, yeah, I'm not where I was, 30 years ago. I'm just not. So
I remember I was witness to the fact that you did mention that from the very beginning. How well you're, maintaining the observance of that thought is another question.
so yeah, so we'll see where it goes. This year should be a telling point. I think it will either really get legs or it won't. But I'm getting good responses at the city. And I spent the morning on the Sugi website, and I'm reaching out to them to really get more connected with them. They have been doing Miyawaki forests all over the world, and they started in 2021, I think, and have had amazing results. They have 26 forests in London, kind of thing. So, and that's been the easiest thing for people to glom onto here too. Planting trees seems like it's a no-brainer, Um, and so I'm going to try and ramp up that part of my understanding in our organization so that we have people ready to go and I'm clear enough about what we need to do. Um, there's a woman who I think has money. Although, everything, all the money that everybody has been tied to the federal government. So a lot of that is really precarious or on pause, as they say. Um, so I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. But there seems to be a number of resources here that can be pulled forward into that won't be dependent on federal money. And I think if the city itself would decide to plant forests instead of a tree in front of every house, I think there are a number of projects we could get to happen on that level. So
Can I ask a quick question though? When you're talking about a mini forest, you're talking about a lot of different levels of structure, having plants of all types, all levels.
Yeah.
And most people don't like that, do they?
Well, they don't understand it. I
Right.
mean, it's not the way we normally plant. And we certainly plant trees as individual things in the landscape with absolutely no support around them at all. Um, and I've been sort of chiding the urban forestry folks that, well, you could at least put a well, put the tree in a well. And she says, oh, we don't want people throwing trash in there. And so she's resistant. So we're working on her to think about those kinds of things. And because of the money thing, it really might be an opportunity to say, because she has made commitments for a bunch of things, and they've been taking out dead trees and that kind of stuff. They have 400 in the city, and she's taken out 100 already. But I do think that there's an opening to think about planting a bunch of trees in a forest to meet those obligations in a slightly different way. So I'm going to be working on that and see if we can't do that. And I need some support with that because I have not done it before. And there are the Sugi group has had incredible success with it, and they also have money. So for the school district, my thought was maybe they would front the money for that. The U district has money. I'm not going to offer her money, but I would offer her support in encouraging her to get something started. She has I'm not sure what the numbers are, $50 million project, probably. It's 207 or 780 acres that she wants to regenerate. So she has picked out a small spot for a mini Miyawaki forest. But now all her funds are on pause too. So it might be a place where we could work together to get something done to sort of showcase what she wants to do. And we can kind of figure out the funding. So I'm going to kind of go with that and just see what's possible there after I am more comfortable about how we get plants. That's the big thing for me. Because there's a number of people around here who have plants, but whether the plants we want or not, I'm not sure about that. So I want to be more clear on that before I go talking to people so that I can answer those questions clearly about what we're doing. Um, so yeah, we had a good meeting yesterday, and we're starting to talk aquifer. The lady who's head of the of Public Works, who I've talked to and whom I will talk to again in a month, was there, and wants us as a committee to support joining an aquifer protection group with the county, which I think is fine. But it really, I mean, it's amazing how little it really seems to have to do with the aquifer because they don't really engage with the aquifer itself. It's all about not using water and making water clear that we're having, and that's all fine. But it's really not centered on the aquifer in any real significant way that I can tell. So I sent everybody an article that Alpha Low had just done on groundwater and the importance of groundwater and why groundwater is such an important thing to get them to think about the ground holding water as maybe something that could be done with the aquifer. And we'll have to vote on this next month, but it gives people another context to think about. So hopefully that will open some eyes. We'll see whether people even read it, but anyway, so I'm starting to sort of wave flags in the city for a slightly different approach to everything we've been doing. So that's where I'm at. So Carl, how about you?
Um, I am working to a deadline to submit a brief or to make a presentation to the California, which is now becoming the California USGBC's annual conference or Green Building Show. The brief is due today, and it is, as you know, it's heavily centered on village homes and that we can actually do things to help cool our planet. And there's some, particularly village homes is an example of a real world example that it's possible to cool our environment if we work with nature and design our communities to build soil and add the moisture back into the ground. That's what I'm doing. Actually, And that is reading through some articles about village homes. Um, that it was it's a note from um, Corbett, husband, but he said that when the first time he presented his plan to the city, I'm sharing this because it seems familiar with kind of what we've been talking about in your work with the city. But when he first submitted the plans to the city, the planner laughed at him
Ah,
and said, well, if we're going to accept this, then I'll have to forget about everything I learned in planning school, and I think you need to go back and start over.
yeah, no, I've gotten those plans too.
So I thought that would ring true for your work with the city. um, um, and you know, and then the context, I mean, um, um, in presenting these ideas to the, you know, the thought leaders of the green design industry, I think that a lot of people, this will be the first time hearing about the biotic pump, and certainly a detailed explanation of a development that is doing a really great job at building soil. And oh, by the way, it's cooler than the rest of the city. We'll see.
So what I'm thinking in hearing what everybody's saying, and given that this is Valentine's Day, to think about how our different experiences that we've shared really are reflections of love.
For sure.
You're muted, Robert.
One thing I'm doing, a friend sent me this list to fill out every day. Reflections on listening and empathy. And so each day I'm supposed to, and I'll just read one. This is in the empathy section. There's a Russian name for empathy that's given. And then it's defined as psychological and emotional resonance with others. And then they used AI to come up with prompts based on what the AI thought of when that was given, you know, that identification was given to it. So the prompt says, reflect on how empathy bridges emotional gaps in relationships. And in 15 of these 15 days apiece, we've really covered a lot of ground in terms of listening and empathy. And the reason I mention that is because they're very simple permutations of all of the same word. Using the AI, that was not valuable because I guess the definitions are slightly different in the different languages and emphasis in that culture. And so the AI came up with these different prompts. And so there are 15 different prompts over 15 days that I write about. There have been several emergent ideas, you know, definitely new to me from doing that. And
Sure.
so, you know, I'm thinking that in terms of a community, it's very definitely something that could, I mean, just doing some work with the word community. And that's one way to do it, is through different definitions in different languages, and which reveal the, you know, the cultural background for that culture. And I particularly love it this way because I happen to have a total conviction that, you know, the human being is a large concept that it's much, much greater than a scattered bunch of individuals who don't want to talk to one another. The human being is made up of now 8 billion. And it's about time we really started listening and understanding one another. Community as well. I've told you in this gathering from time to time, I spent time in Oregon during the 70s, and it was all about community. In fact, I'm amazed because Elise Boulding had done these experiments, and observations based on having groups of people work with the term community. And she came up with what was for them the perfect community. And I was scratching my head and I said, well, that's the way it was in Eugene, Oregon, 1970 to 1980 until the recession killed it. And that's where a lot was happening that was emergent, new, something different for those who had the imagination to see it. And then a lot of things were just the same old, same old. There was that cultural background that we couldn't get away from, particularly the interactions between men and women. So that seemed to be a major stumbling block, is that the old culture was brought through dominant men, husky he guys, and the woman being subservient, darling, go get me a Coke or whatever. And so this kind of exercise really got thinking about how different we see the world in different parts of the world, but also how fully I can see the subject on my own. I'm capable of imagining a lot of variety, variance. So I just wanted to mention that because I thought it was extremely well thought out. I have no idea who conceived of it. Well,
what were some of the new insights that have happened?
Well, Robert, can you share that document with us?
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll scan it and I'll send them to you. It's the insights were, in terms of listening, just how dramatic total quietness in mind and heart is absolutely critical. I started running, I started watching just how much programmatic stuff was going on in my head when I was supposedly listening to someone. And then I could observe, that, okay, what happens in particularly intentional sharing? I mean, what happens there? Because they did ask at the beginning to set that up. What conversation do you remember after 50 years? Well, it wasn't 50, it was 30. And so I was writing it out for myself. And then it's about this young woman who'd gone as a 20-something to Afghanistan with an NGO and ended up developing a school for girls and, in a sense, running it. I guess there were others, but part of that group that was running the school. And this was at a conference in Istanbul, and she'd just come back because the school had been closed down. Suddenly the girls were not allowed to go to school anymore, high school. So she just downloaded to me. I mean, we were just sitting together and we were talking, and then suddenly 3 hours later, I realized I'd been through an incredible experience. So it was something I could think about, why was I able to listen for 3 hours and still remember this all these years later? A lot of what she told me. And, you know, what kinds of thoughts came up? One was she was a very attractive young lady, so that came up as saying, you know, how much did that influence this situation? Um, and so forth and so on. Just writing about it brought this all back from memory and, you know, some of the feelings that were there. And that was one of them. Another one, in terms of empathy, I began to realize just how critical it is to, well, let me just, how do I explain this? Well, how much of a role compassion has, and what is compassion? Thinking about that, and how together compassion plus time experience begins to, you know, describe what empathy is all about, something you carry with you away from it, of shared information and understanding. So it just drove a lot of thoughts, and I do it every morning, usually before anything else, but this morning it was done around 11. It's been busy, but yeah, I think any conversation about community would have to wrestle with these two, you know, overarching themes of listening and empathy. Because unless we're doing it, for instance, in terms of many of the communities that I was involved in, I was the builder or the designer builder. And I found that I could communicate through my tools, you know, explaining the tools and helping somebody, you know, use them and getting them to work. There was more real sharing in that then carried over for years sometimes. So the act of actually doing something together that you're both interested in, instead of just applying jobs. I mean, night watch was even fun. Night watch, because we sit at the gates and just all night because there were problems in the area. And I got into amazing conversations with some of the other guys. These are the things you remember.
Oh, it's an interesting thought, remembering old conversations and how those were. I just think that's very interesting. It would be really difficult. I can remember having conversations, but I don't remember the conversation.
Yeah. Well, I have one other. There's been two that I remember in that way. The other one was a young man, a helicopter pilot who just come back from Vietnam. And for some reason, he decided that I was trustworthy enough to download for 4 hours overnight, just talk about his crazy service in Vietnam.
Oh, that's wonderful, though. What a gift.
Yeah, it was quite powerful because he was a real cowboy in the sense of the way he flew a helicopter was like riding a Mustang, unbroken Mustang.
I was talking to a gentleman yesterday who, similar with Catherine, has a background in agile engineering, agile coaching or thinking, planning, who's for all of his technical training, he's quite metaphysical and reflective. And he's kind of up there with like you, he's in his late 70s. And he particularly said that he finds himself telling stories about his life differently than what he did when he was younger.
Right.
And I thought it made me think of this it's an enormous lesson that I took from a history professor and a friend person who I was renting a room from in college who was much older than us, who had a bachelor's degree in history from he was the first person I met who had a really deep liberal arts education. But so the idea is that that history says as much about us today as it does as reporting about Rome or whatever. And I thought that that as you tell stories or as you tell stories about your life, that it probably will change. It should change because you're now you're a different person and you're telling the story through a life of today.
Yeah, one would hope that there's a change and that something has happened wisdom wise.
Very true, because even 30 years ago, that what was happening in Eugene doesn't exist anymore. I mean, it's just so totally changed.
Yeah.
Of course, that was 50.
Could I interject something here?
Sure.
Okay. It's just my thought stream. I'd just like to share my current thought stream is that we are 8 billion humans on Earth. And the thought about it is that we're 8 billion humans on Earth, being of soulful giving of our time and talent, sharing our time and talents for the good of all. I mean, I really know no more generative thought than the fact that we are 8 billion humans on Earth. And to turn our attention to being to be soul fulfilling, because on the soul level there's so much more energy to so much more creative energy on a soulful level for 8 billion humans on Earth to share our time and talents for the good of all. And the theme being the good of all.
Yeah, what's interesting, I think, to me is that you can't help the good of all unless you really are helping yourself in that authentic way also. That those two things are so intimately connected. I was reading a blog post yesterday from a guy who's discovered that he needs to rethink himself now that he has a child. And he's discovering a lot of other men in that situation are also rethinking or feeling the need to rethink who they are and what they're doing. It's one thing to play the success game, to want more and bigger stuff. But once you have children, then that's such a different context, and it shifts how you think about what you're doing and the importance of what you're doing and what you're really trying to accomplish shifts or can shift, or people want it to shift at that time because their family now has a value it didn't have before, and it requires time and attention that it didn't require before. And that goes against the way our whole system is set up, which is to just drive for success and devote all your time and energy to your career and that kind of stuff. So he's really been working with how to work with other men to rethink what it means to be a father. And that is the point that he was making, is that it's just um, how do you become authentic? How do you begin to choose situations and a way of being that feeds your soul, that feeds your life, that feeds your family, literally and metaphorically, without playing the success game? And how can you be okay with other people getting promotions and getting the rewards of the success system when you're choosing not to participate in that kind of way? Where do you find nurturing that allows you to still hang on to the success of that and not feeling less than, or feeling like you're not being who you really should be, from society's definition of what a real man looks like. So just really interesting things, provocative things to think about. Um, I think that's one of the, well, I would say for both, I see that happening in both you, Carl, and you, Robert, that the way in which you have taken on the profession you've chosen has been a way that nurtures yourself while you're being successful, which is different than just working on the success. But the nurturing piece has been really integral to
Mhm.
what both of you have chosen to do and the way you've chosen to do it.
Yeah, if we're not nurturing our own soul in whatever it is that we're doing, I believe we're missing the primary mark.
Yep. Yep. And
And of course,
it
go
is hard because
ahead.
you don't show up as successful as you could have been if you'd done the other game. And so there's a certain amount of self-compassion, I guess, or appreciation in a different way that has to be there to manage that tension or potential
Yeah, I mean,
tension.
it's only intelligent.
Well, I've never made a lot of money. I've always been on the edge for just that reason, because I can't do
Yeah,
things that I don't love. And I couldn't
right.
do things that I didn't felt brought forth life.
That's right.
So I just didn't get involved in them. So I passed up a lot of opportunities and don't have the resources and all that I would have had I played another game, like my brother. I mean, we're just a really great example because he's really played that game and he's got all those tools. But he spends most of his time now playing golf. And I could not do that. I just couldn't do that. I mean, it just sounds so empty, you know? And he's filled it this last year or so with traveling, which is great. But he's kind of hit that point again where, okay, they've traveled for a full year pretty much and done all sorts of things and been all sorts of places. And now what? But he's filling time. He's not really, and it's interesting and it's good, but it's really filling time. It's not being productive or giving back in any real way except being a nice person when you're in a foreign country, which is nice. But so it's, yeah, yeah. So I haven't made a lot of money, but I've had a good time.
Yeah, the most I one era of my life I paid attention to. I was interested in how much money I actually made, and the most I've ever made, and this was in the prime of my life, was 30,000 in 1 year. And I don't know if that's a lot or not. I just know that's the most I've ever made in 1 year, and it's only in 1 year at the prime of my life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I made I think 100,000 in 1 year with a partner. Yeah, but
Uh-huh.
that was it was about 15 months, and then that disappeared. So yeah, and I've not been able to duplicate that.
Yeah.
But I really get the nature of this choice. That certainly I made the same choice, that I was not going to work for anybody, well, for any purpose other than I felt it was useful, of service to others and enjoyable. I mean, of course, there were stretches where I had to do things that
Yeah,
I didn't feel that good for a month or two or three, but in general, that I was always loving what I was doing.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it doesn't pay that well compared to the real society, the one that surrounds us. The benchmarks in terms of salary are really high. And yet my wife and I live very, very simply. So we saved a lot of money. I had virtually no money when I first met her, which was a little more than what she had. And so we actually buckled down and, we saved a lot of money because we just live very, very simply.
Yeah.
So we're almost surprised at how successful that was. I mean, we are surprised. It's a miracle. No, we can't figure out how that happened in some ways. A lot of things fell, but I mean, it's I mean, I'm really happy I took that course of action. Looking back and looking at my story over the lifetime, I don't see that I've done anything too much different.
Yeah. I feel the same way too. When I look back at it, there's not much that I would have changed.
And
I
that's
do too.
fairly rare.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry,
what-
Robert, you said you barely what?
that's fairly rare from what I understand. I mean, it's not rare as in pure numbers, like there's only three or four of us out. No, I mean, but there's 10%, which is a
Yeah.
lot of people, but it's a small percentage of the total population.
I remember at a high school reunion, it was probably probably a 10-year anniversary, 10-year high school reunion. And a friend of mine who was a class valedictorian, who very smart guy, and I went to Berkeley, and then he was actually the executive director of the California Energy Commission. So by all measures, that successful thing. But I remember him telling me, this is 10 years after high school. He said, "Carl, you're the only one in this room here tonight that's doing what you love."
Yeah.
Mm.
I think about it every once in a while. It's like, it's I'll take it because he's smart and he's whatever that it was a sharp insight. But he during probably in his 40s he started playing bass, the stand-up bass, and got really involved in the Bay Area, I don't know, jazz scene. So I think he retired when he could, and now his life is music. So he's, but it's a stunning thing to hear when I guess you're 28 or so, that this room full of people, and there's so few people do what they love.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that in my high school reunion. I was not ever really close to folks in high school, but I was curious, and they actually sought me out at one point. So I joined the website that they created for us, and where I was on it, the clearer it was. This is not my folks. I'm sorry. There was just nothing to talk to with about to any of them. I mean, we didn't share the same interests. I don't care what people wear or where they work, or I mean, that's just no interest in the world. No, lots of validating what they see instead of questioning what they see. It was just there's just no reason for me to spend a lot of time with you guys. Sorry. Yeah, and I've never really looked back. Just nothing there. Well, I am going to have to go. I have to leave it. I've got a noon appointment that I've got to travel to. So
Okay. Well, thank you for hosting us, hostessing us.
And thank you
very much. I will send these points. What did you call it? The reflections on listening and empathy. I'll send that as soon as we finish.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Okay. Happy Valentine's Day. to
Yes,
all.
indeed. Yes,
Thank
indeed.
you.
Blessings, blessings along the way.
Mr. Carl, we will talk in a bit.
Carl, I'm not sure I have your email address.
Let me
Put it in the
well,
chat.
let me check. Um,
I'm just putting it in the chat.
okay, I'm gonna type yours in.
Oh,
Yeah, it's easy to remember, actually.
Carl Welty, I have it.
Heart.
Okay,
Yes.
I have it, so good. And I have Ani and I have,
You know, there was something we're talking about trees, and I wanted to add a point. That we use trees, like when Catherine says we plant trees as objects. Trees just they're just another object that planners, architects plant put on the landscape in this sort of regularized geometry as a trophy, as a decoration,
Mhm.
without any potential for functioning as a. So the Miyawaki forest, or the key to is to plant them with enough density to function like an ecosystem.
Yeah.
It's beautifully simple if once you get past the cultural norm of to
Yeah.
treat everything like a like a trophy.
okay, well, we'll see each other, hear each other, share with each other next time.
Yes.
next week. See you later.
Blessings, blessings to all.
Blessings, everybody. Indeed.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.